No, there
As
we
long
go.
as it's forward. God, send me anywhere, only go with me. Lay any burden on me, only sustain me. And sever any tie in my heart except the tie that binds my heart to yours. If you have men who will only come if they know where there is a good road, I don't want them. I want men who will come if there is no road at all. I will go anywhere, provided it be forward. David Livingston, 1813 to 1873.
Thank you so much. So welcome everyone to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, a conversation circle. That reading is obviously from the Christian tradition, and we take up topics from all sorts of traditions. Today we're kind of doing a beautiful conglomeration in anticipation of Mother's Day being tomorrow. We thought we would choose the idea of Mother Earth as a very broad topic that our two presenters for today could each speak on from very different traditions. The first presenter that we have for today is, I'll probably do this in an interview form with her, is Skylar Riella. And she's going to be speaking from the Hindu tradition, or on the Hindu tradition, on the story of the Ramayana, and in particular, the character of Princess Sita, a role that she played when Stella Moving Center enacted the story of the Ramayana most recently, this last Diwali celebration in autumn of 2023. And then we will move over to my having a little chat with Amos Clifford, and I'll have Phyllis introduce him after we've talked with Skylar for a bit. And that will be on the idea of Mother Earth from the tradition of the guide, and that in relationship with the whole idea of forest bathing, forest therapy. So I think it's going to be really a fascinating combination. So I'll talk with Skylar a bit, I'll talk with Amos a bit, and then we'll all engage in conversation together. And, so let's go on ahead forward. And Skylar, let me start with you. So would you like me, or would you like to give a very brief outline of the Ramayana from the standpoint of Princess Sita?
Sure. I'm wondering if I could start just for myself, um,
Yes.
and talk about my experience playing Princess Sita, because I think that it's interesting for me to come into that, and then I'll have my locus of control kind of explained so that I can go into my understanding of it.
Okay.
So I think many of us know the Ramayana, but that's when was it? Last year um, was the first time I really got to delve into it, other than just basically knowing about its existence. And it was such an interesting experience for me to go into this Hindu culture, because the Ramayana is one of the major Hindu texts, and it's actually um, usually cited as older than the Vedas, so about 4,000 years old, and is often seen as the oldest story, that we have recorded, and it continues to this day. So obviously, a really, really important story for, I would say, much of humanity, not just the Indian subcontinent. And I would be playing a main character, Sita. So this was definitely a hefty ask for me, and I was really nervous about doing it, because I just felt like, oh God, I am the least qualified person to play this character. um, so I'm Buddhist. Um, so Buddhism and Hinduism sort of exist in conversation, but definitely not exactly the same in any sense. I'm white. I'm not Indian. I've never been to India, um, and I'm non-binary. So the idea of playing a female character, such a like a princess, was almost scary for me. So I had a lot of reticence moving forward with that. And actually, it was my partner Z who's on here. I'm pointing towards him where I can see him. He may be in a different location for you, but you know, he really wanted to play Rom and sort of, you know, convinced me like, okay, I should try this. I was really in the very beginning dragging my feet, but I'm so glad I did because it was actually a very transformative experience for me. Uh, and it was also a real honor to play, just like it's an honor to talk to you all here. But to go into my understanding of the Ramayana, it's basically the story of darkness versus light. It's the festival of lights. And so it plays out this archetype of good versus evil. And I think it also plays out the archetype of eros versus logos. So that divine feminine versus divine masculine. This might be a good time to bring up the quote, actually. I sent it in the email, but maybe would it be okay if I read it?
Yes.
So this is from the Ramayana, a more modern translation, but I really struck on this quote from the author as the essential Sita, I suppose. So it goes, Sita, the female counterpart of the Supreme Being, is the embodiment of compassion and grace. Compassion is the Supreme Mother, and she is enthroned in the heart of the Lord. When she casts her merciful gaze on us, we reach the feet of God. And so this discussion of the Supreme Mother is, for me, a really on the nose type thing. Because A, it's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers in attendance. And also we're talking about Mother Earth. So our ultimate mother, right? So Sita as a character is not just a princess. She's a princess that was born from a furrow. So Sita means like a furrow or, you know, a divot in the land. And her father is a king, found her in that divot and then raised her as his own. So she's this noble character, but also essentially from the earth. And I had no idea how to play this character. You know, when I first started, I was trying to embody this like a Disney princess, you know. I have my hand here and the birds light on it and, you know, flowing gowns and glass slippers, you know. I was just like, okay, Cinderella in a sari maybe, you know. I had no touch point in which to play. And I'm used to playing more masculine roles, you know. I wanted to share, before doing this play, almost all of my roles were as male characters, and I was also a drag king. So I was very used to embodying the divine masculine. I think I can share my screen. It's from Kings of Tokyo, which is the troupe that I founded. So this is the type of character I was used to playing. This is Emmanuel Transmission. And this is the sort of character that I enjoyed playing, like this very over the top, very hyper masculine, you know, just in your face, kind of half an homage and half like a teardown of masculinity. That sort of thing was more my style. So when I tried to play Sita at first, it was just very difficult because I had all of these ideas. Then Janani, who is one of the people who teach the traditional Indian Bharatanatyam, and is a good friend of mine, she was also part of the Diwali, and she told me, think about Sita as an elephant. You know, the touch point is elephant. And that completely changed my entire way that I played that character. It was like night and day, you know. I considered the feminine, and this is coming from a really Western perspective too. This idea of feminine as light and airy, and I'll be honest, like I had these really negative preconceptions of what it is to be a princess, right? Um, and then when Janani explained, you know, Sita is the elephant, that really struck me, and it changed my entire way of playing it. Because, yes, there's beauty in that character, but also so much power, so much like immortal strength to that character. I guess that goes into who is Sita. Um, I've already given you a long answer though, Renee. Did you have another question? Because I'd love to just launch into it. Oh, Renee, you're muted.
Just to let those who don't know the basic outline of the Ramayana, Prince Ram is about to inherit the throne. He has already won the hand of Princess Sita, much to her delight. She has chosen him at her Svayambara, and he's going to inherit his father's throne the next morning, when palace intrigue causes the king to honor a past promise by Ram's mother-in-law, and to make her son the king instead, and to banish Ram to the forest for 14 years, at which point Sita insists on accompanying him to the forest. While they are there, the demon king from the island of Lanka finds out that this exquisite princess is relatively unattended, and lures Prince Ram away from her. He takes Sita to his home, his palace on Lanka. From there, Prince Ram, with his allies, needs to find Sita. He has no idea what happened to her, and then come to do battle for her and rescue her, and to bring her home in time 14 years later to reascend the throne with Sita at his side as his queen now. So just wanted to make sure that we kind of had a framework for the story of Sita. And yeah, so I think what you're telling us about your experience of playing Sita is so not just fascinating, but really deep, Skylar, in terms of what you learned, and that comparison of the elephant and that beautiful swaying yet heavy walk of the elephant just gives so much more of a grounding and a much more comprehensible idea of the idea of Mother Earth in regard to Mother Sita. And then also the idea that Ram is considered to be the divine descent into a human form of one of the three main gods of the Hindu tradition. And for each of these male divinities, there's a consort. So when Ram was born on earth as the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, simultaneously his female consort, the other half of that force in the universe, was also born on earth as Princess Sita. So if you wanted to talk about that dynamic a little bit, I'd be super fascinated, Skylar.
And thank you for that. I think that for me, that was my transformation personally. This understanding of the divine feminine versus the divine masculine and where it comes from. So playing Sita brought into my understanding of not just gender, right? Because the idea of male and female, man and woman, is often seen, in a Western frame as a binary, right? You have this, and here on the exact opposed opposite, you have that. And it's interesting that, from my own Western bias, I came at it from that framework. Ram is like strong and very big and all of that hero, and a princess is someone to be saved, is how a lot of the stories that I grew up with went, and that didn't sit well with me. And that was why I was so hesitant to play that character. But what the Ramayana is really talking about, and what I hope came through in my portrayal of Sita, is not anything to do with gender as, the human physiology. It's much more about the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and what the story has to tell us. So I've always wondered, why did this story get passed on for all this time? It's one of the oldest stories, if not the oldest story in human history. So what is it trying to tell us? And of course, there are many different takes on that, but my understanding, or the understanding that resonates the most with me, is the idea of Ram being this divine masculine, or logos, Sita as this divine feminine, eros, and Ravana representing chaos, right? When it was written, 4,000 years ago was when it was first written. It was probably told longer than that. That was a time in human history where we know from, archaeology and records that people were first starting to really get into this whole agrarian lifestyle, right? Coming from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, where we relied so much on Mother Earth, right, to provide as we went around and hunted and gathered from Mother Earth. And it was just really starting to be the turn of using tools and bronze. And I don't want to get into it because that's a whole side story, but we were starting to use our intellect, our minds as a human species to farm, to start to prepare the earth, to start to enact our own will on the earth. And with that came this tension, right? I've been reading this book that I absolutely love called Belonging by Topapa Turner. And I think she says it better than I ever could. So I wanted to read a passage from there that talks about the ideas of Eros, or Sita, Mother Earth, and Logos, this Ram figure in my understanding, or human intellect. It says, there is this ancient heartbreak living at the center of each of us, between two unrequited lovers we'll call Eros and Logos. If only we could introduce them, they might remember, they might finally fall in love as destiny intended, in a holy union of opposites within. With her beguiling beauty, Eros will possess you. She's a singer and a dreamer whose elements are mystery, magic, and earth. Her home is in the wild, and she speaks the language of all untamed beings. She is the animal body, both fierce and graceful, who moves with the rhythm and sway of the soul. And that is Sita, literally born of the earth with this elephant-like power and just length of time to her, this resoluteness, which is the theme of this week, and just continuing, unwavering. And then Logos is a powerful emperor who rules the sky kingdom, a place vaster than anyone has ever seen. He's a brilliant mathematician whose elements are reason, law, and matter. He's devoted to a life of logical inquiry in search of absolute truths and is a master of creating order from nothing. He builds complex systems and then he governs them with uncontestable law. The truth is that Eros and Logos belong to one another, but for as long as any of us can remember, they have been estranged. And to me, that is the story of the Ramayana. You know, of course, there are many different characters, but I see the story as this essential tension between these three forces. Sita, or Eros, which is that animal body of us, you know, what it could be called the intuition. Ram, or Logos, which is that almost divine intellect, this ability to rule, right, and to enact our will upon the earth, for better or for worse. And then Ravana, who's the demon who's causing all this trouble so that these deities had to incarnate on earth in the first place, is this idea of chaos, right? When we were hunter-gatherers, I feel like there was a lot of things that were very much outside of human control, and that, of course, created this tension, like, you know, natural disasters, famine, all these struggles, you know, that we had to deal with as basically being fully dependent on our mother. And then as we became more agrarian, as we started to work the land and stay in one place, we started to use our intellect, that logos, to be in more of a conversation with the earth, to start to create those systems, and to start to create kingdoms, right? Which is what Ram is all about. He's a prince and then he becomes king. And it's a tension of Sita, our earth, wanting to be with it, wanting to be in relationship with it, and also seeing that being stolen, right? Which is Ravana's character to me, this idea of being separated from the yin to our yang, right? When we're in separation, we can't exist healthily. We must be both mind and body, right? That's what the center is all about. And I couldn't agree more. You know, having this union is what I find for myself brings a lot of help. But like many people in the West, you know, I came indoctrinated with so much negativity towards the feminine. And it was really enlightening, honestly, to play this character, seeing how femininity is so much more than a Disney princess, so much more than like this idea that we often, capitalize on in the West, and seeing how male and female are not separate.
Well, that's a great start for us. Thank you so much, Skylar. I know I have more questions in regard to what you mentioned. I'm sure other people have questions and comments as well. And so what I'd like to do now is transition over to getting Amos Clifford's perspective on Mother Earth from the tradition of the guide. And so sorry, I might not be able to stop that. There. And so I wanted to call upon Phyllis Look, who's the person who was kind enough to tell me about a gem who could come to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions. And so Phyllis, could you please introduce us to Amos Clifford?
Yes, of course. So Amos is actually going to be here in person next week. I'm really excited about that. He's here to support our Healing Trees program, which is a series of free forest bathing walks that we're doing on Maui. as a response to the Lahaina wildfires, and offering forest therapy as a means of coming back to a relationship to the land through forest therapy. He's also here to help me celebrate the fact that I've just completed, I'm about to complete the 450th walk that I've guided. I'm Phyllis Look with Forest Bathing Hawaii, and I'm the first certified forest therapy guide here on the islands. This is not an official way of introducing Amos because I didn't prepare a bio for him, but I do know a few things: that he founded the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs in 2012. Coming from a rich background as a nature guide himself, also a practitioner of Zen Buddhism, also a psychotherapist and mediator in the social justice realm. And I met Amos when I did my training in 2018 in Costa Rica. And the thing I wanted to leave you with is something that he shared with us. And something that's really stuck with me about Amos. He told us about his first memory. And he tells us that he was still, I don't know how old, but still in his crib. And his first memory is of listening to the trees and hearing them talk to him. So I'm wondering now what else he's been hearing from the trees in the last 12 years since this fantastic training organization, Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, has taken root and sprouted all sorts of forests around the world. So please help me in giving a warm aloha and welcome to Amos Clifford, the founder of Association of Nature and Forest Therapy.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. Take it away, Amos, if you'd be so kind. Let's see, we need you
There we go. Yeah, thank you, Phyllis, for that. And yeah, the memory that you're referring to, I grew up in Santa Barbara, and there were some fruit trees, I guess, outside the house. They identified themselves as fruit trees. And I could hear them singing. The orange trees would sing first, oranges, oranges, we are oranges. And they sounded so happy about that. And then the lemon trees would answer. They had a different voice, a more lemony voice. And they would say, lemons, lemons, we are lemons. And then there was another kind of tree that would sing that I didn't understand the words to. Nowadays, I think it might have been a eucalyptus, because there are a lot of eucalyptus around there. Now, interestingly, I recently talked to my brother about this. He's a year and a half younger than I am. He remembers it differently. His memory is we would go up to the window, the second floor window, and look down at the trees, and there were little fairies or elves dancing around them, and they were singing. So when they would dance around the orange tree, they would say, we love oranges, we love oranges. So that's how he remembers it. Now, to my mind now, I think it's completely reasonable for each of us to remember it quite differently, because experiences of communicating with other than human beings in this way take place in a realm called the imaginal, the mundus imaginalis, the imaginal world. And the imaginal world is a place that we access with this beautiful capacity we have of imagination. I'm hesitant to say that because people will then tend to mistakenly think I'm talking about something that's imaginary, but it's not. Things that are in the imaginal world are real entities that live in a place called the imaginal world. And so early on, I had this connection, and then as I was growing, I was like everyone else, got caught up in the culture-wide project to tame us out of such nonsense and to be trained to think rationally and insist on evidence in the sense that it's whatever experience it is a replicable experience that can be observed and studied by others. And while that works fine in the phenomenal or sensory world, in the imaginal world, and then the next sphere out from that we might call the spiritual world, it doesn't work that way. And so coming from the spiritual world, when we have interesting experiences that don't align with get the consensus reality of the phenomenal world, but we have a word for that, we call them miracles. When we have connections to other than human beings through the imaginal world, we have a word for that too. We call it schizophrenia or delusional or woo-woo. We have a lot of ways to dismiss it. All of those words to dismiss it fall in the realm of what I consider to be taming. They're trying to tame our minds so that we are fit members of the society, the culture that we live in. And so I've learned a lot about the imaginal world and communicating with other than human beings. I remember, in fact, one time I was 18 and growing up in Santa Barbara there, I had a lot of contact with poison oak in the canyons, and also during the fires. Sometimes the smoke from the fires there would be carry the oil from the poison oak and could produce rashes. And one day I was walking around and it was a day when the moon was in the sky, and I came to a really big, thick patch of poison oak. And I just stood there and looked at it and felt my way into it and shared with it. I said, now when I say I'm talking about speaking from my heart. Whatever is coming out is coming from my heart. It may or may not get translated into spoken language. It might get translated into gestures or stillness or something, but in this case, it was spoken language. I just said, poison oak, you're such a beautiful plant, and I've suffered so much from contact with you, and I'm tired of that, and I would like to be at peace with you. And I stood there for a moment, and I heard. And when I say I heard, I'm not hearing here. I'm hearing through the heart, through the imaginal capacity. And I heard the poison oak say, well, we can make that happen, but we need you to do something. If you're really sincere about this, walk straight through right now. So it was probably about, 20, 30 yards deep, head height or more, very thick patch of poison oak. And I took that seriously and I walked through it. And after doing that, I went 30 years without having any poison oak rash, in spite of it continuing to be in contact with it. And interestingly, when I did have it again, it was in the context of a 5-day ordeal at the end of a year-long men's initiation process. And when I had that, what happened was it was a very hot day. We were up on a hillside in Sonoma County, and we were doing some hard physical labor. And I was wearing boots. And when I went out away from the cleared area, the ceremony area, into where we were doing physical labor, I'd put the boots on. So imagine I'm working with the bootlaces. Then I'd come back out and I'd take them off, just cool my feet. On and off. Oh, and while I'm in there, I'm eating sandwiches. So you see what's happening? There's low poison oak growing everywhere out there. It's getting on the laces of the boots. It's getting on my hands. It's getting on the sandwiches. So I get this poison oak systemically, which means my entire body breaks out in a rash. And I thought about it. I thought, well, what happened with my deal there? Did I do something to offend poison oak, or is there some kind of medicine in this for me? And remember, this is at the end of a year-long initiation process. That context is important, because what was needed for this initiation process, before I could take the new name that the elders gave me, I needed to shed my skin. Much as a snake. This is why snakes are symbols of transformation. They shed their skin and they come out new. So here's my old friend, poison oak, offering this very, very harsh medicine, very painful medicine. I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. Please don't go out and ingest poison oak if you think. Don't do it. This happened because it was an offering from the land in the context of ceremony, right? And it was, so I just sat with the pain. I'd learned from a long time of Zen meditation how to just sit with whatever's going on. So I sat with it, and the worst was on the palms of my hands, because they were the last to really release the skin. And so what you're looking at right now, even though this was 12 years ago or so, this is the new me after shedding my skin, with the assistance of the medicine of a plant that most of us know just as something to fear. And again, I want to say I don't recommend this in the context of ceremony. The earth and its many peoples that are all intelligent will show up in response to whatever invitation you're holding in your heart. When I talk about the imaginal world and communicating, the imaginal sense, the imaginal capacity we have, lives in our hearts. It's not primarily up here in the head, it's primarily in our hearts. A way I imagine this is when I go into the forest, there's a sphere, an imaginal sensory sphere that surrounds me, moves through the forest with me. And that sphere is receiving impressions from everybody around. And if I know how to pay attention to that, then some of those impressions will be communication. And what the others are experiencing of me has to do with what's in my heart. This is a key role of intention. We don't work that much with understanding the intentions that we hold in our heart. I don't even think intention is something I make up. I think it's something I discover because I think I was born with it. Another way that I think of intention is it's like a commission from heaven. I think it's related to that scripture that says God creates us in his image and likeness. That image, the particular way it lives in me, lives in my heart. And that intention has something to do with why I'm on this planet. Do I spend the time to cultivate that and to align with it? It's easy to get out of alignment with our intentions. When I'm in alignment with intention, then a conversation is constantly occurring between me and the rest of the world. I would say one element of that conversation is revelation. Revelation meaning a removal of the veil. That's the etymology, like lifting the veil, revelation. And so now there's a kind of a vision that's possible, that's not received primarily through the eyes. It's received again in the heart. So I want to try to bring this to the idea of Mother Earth. And one way to explore the idea of Mother Earth is to think of her as having this incredibly beautiful heart and intention that is at the core of all the processes of her life and all the different ways she sustains us and all the offerings she has. So if we're experiencing this in the imaginal realm, we can, with our imaginal sense, meet these beautiful imaginal emanations from the earth, and we meet them through solid things. A stone, sit with a stone for a while. Talk with it, speaking from the heart. You might talk with a stone with your hands or with a tree. But the key thing then is to listen. And the listening, again, is done in the heart. And that means the information that comes back to you, the impressions being made on this sphere of your imaginal capacity, your imaginal sensorium, those impressions can come back as memories, poems, songs, urges to move your body in a particular way, daydreams, sudden need to nap, and dreams that come from that. It may come from sensations like interesting scents may come to you, or the air may start tasting differently, or you may just suddenly see things that have been right there in front of you all along while you've been in this conversation. You had not noticed them. This is a phenomenon of noticing what's right in front of you. That the story I tell myself, I call it the slow reveal. Go and sit somewhere for 20 minutes. Just sit. Don't do anything. Don't make it into a meditation exercise or anything. Just, as Mary Oliver says, let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Just do that. You stay in one place. Notice if you may have a similar experience. If something that's right in front of you doesn't come into your attention until you've been there 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right in front of you, this far from your eyes, maybe. And when that happens, perhaps entertain the question, in what way is this revelation? In what way is the slow reveal, the removing of the veil and revealing to me something that my heart is calling out for and that is offering something to my heart? I have an invitation that can help with this. It's called Flower Phone. And, the flowers are all rooted into the earth. And you can go and find a nice flower somewhere and think of it as speak into it and say, hello, mother. Hello, mother. How are you? It's a while since we've talked. I hope you're well. I want you to know I love you. Okay, so you speak that into the flower. Now do the next part. Put your ear up to the flower. And remember, your ear is connected to your heart. The flower is connected to the heart of the Mother Earth. And you may find yourself in a conversation going back and forth with this beautiful Mother Earth. And this is to me, it's a good way to begin to experience your imaginal capacity. So I would suggest that you don't just dismiss what comes up using this very, to me, taming phrase. Oh, it was just my imagination. Oh, that's only in your imagination. As if by saying it lives in your imagination, we should dismiss it. We should not take it seriously. Can we untame ourselves of that idea, please? You may have all seen this poster. It's the typical Einstein posters, hairs all over the place, and it's a dark background. It has a quote on it that is attributed to him. It says, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Well, is that true? If that's true, why is that true? And how do we experience that? And where I would take that is into the realm, the imagination as a mental capacity gets us into the heart realm of the imaginal. I think some really powerful alchemy happens that way. We do that. So we make ourselves open to very powerful changes. And the journey we go on may start in the dark forest. It may start in very difficult times. We may go through a period of feeling the world that we've kept in the shadow portion of our mind, the things that we haven't wanted to acknowledge or to look at, may make themselves known. What a wonderful opportunity that is. Because that's where we move from that's where we may move into ego collapse. And ego collapse is what makes room for the blossoming of the self with a capital S, the Jungian self, what we might call the soul. So to me, what I've been talking about, this is really for me the point of forest therapy. I don't know, we've trained close to 3,000 guides now. Last time I counted, it was 66 countries. We have 20 trainers and spread around the world, and I feel like I threw a pebble into the pond and the ripples are going out, but I don't know what ripples are going out from all the people who are getting trained and then experiencing being guided. I don't know if any of them have these similar experiences to the way I experience it. I just honestly don't know. I hope they do, but in the way of the guide, the overriding hope is that they have the experience that is right for them, that is on their soul curriculum for their particular moment and experience of life. So what I'm describing that I experience, I describe it, and I might make invitations, but I don't prescribe it. I hope that some of the ideas that I share are useful for you. I want to say one more thing, and then I'll pause for questions, or I'm not, however this process is working today. So I have guided walks specifically on Mother's Day with a mother's theme. And one of the things that comes up on those walks is almost everyone has some trauma related to their earthly mother. Almost everyone. Almost everyone has some wounds. Almost everyone has some deep sorrow or grief there. And I wonder to what extent the unresolved griefs we have with our human mothers, to what extent the lack of resolution in those ripples out as conflicts that we have with Mother Earth, because we are a species in conflict with Mother Earth. And I would say that, when I started ANFT and forest therapy, I was specifically looking for, and had been for years, a way to try to help people heal some of the conflicts and wounds between each of us and this beautiful planet we live on. I'm hoping that the ripples that go out from my work are doing that, and that the ripples that come into my life from the work all of you are doing are helping me with that. So I'll stop there for now.
Such beautiful shares. I think I'd like to just like really throw this conversation open. I can only imagine that each of us have had so many little sparks go off in our minds and you know, in our hearts. Just amazing things were said when you were talking about the teachings that you get from the imaginal realm. By the way, Amos, I wanted to just remember that what spoke to Skylar finally, to feeling as if she had some connection and sense of communication with this character of Sita, whether Princess Sita or Mother Sita, was the connection through the elephant. That somehow that is what allowed her to really come to a deeper connection with this divine feminine. But I really do want to open it up for those of you who have been listening so attentively, and see what's going on in your hearts and minds that you'd like to share. Mother Earth is the main topic.
I just want to make a comment on that last thing Amos mentioned about how a lot of us have trauma in our, biological mom, and how that translates to the way we treat Mother Earth. So I just want to make the comment that thank you for that. That left me thinking, and I so appreciate there's someone like you creating these methods of dealing with this to heal ourselves and the world. So I have a lot to think about and respect to that. So thank you for that.
Diana.
For me, Skylar, I really appreciated how you delved deeply into the meaning of Sita. I don't know this, I just heard the story. So, but it's just how you were able to really look at the strength of the Divine Mother, or strength of the feminine, and really change that dynamic. And Amos, that you were that idea of deep listening for me is listening to everything, a rock, the world, just being with it in deep listening allows us to use that feminine intuitive knowing, because we're being spoken to all the time by everything. And so it's like training and learning, how do we listen and how do we discover the meaning of these things, and the strength of Mother Earth and the power of that intuitive knowing allows us to understand so much more about ourselves and the world. And that for me, it just comes down to we are all one. And if we can open our mind and heart to find out about our blocks, as Skylar did, what does it mean to be intuitive and feminine? What does it mean to really relate to Mother Earth as the Divine Mother, and really honor that and listen to that? And both of them just felt really good. And I thank you. And it's really nice to know, Amos, I've never heard of what you do. So to me, it just really spoke to my heart, because I work with guided imagery a lot with people, and working with listening and deep listening through meditation, but also just allowing yourself to be informed by everything in your life, and the poison oak, the whatever, what is the lesson? Not that it happens for a lesson, but what is my spiritual contract with this experience so that I can learn more and really become truly more loving and caring for myself and others. So thank you very much, both of you.
Elizabeth. Elizabeth is an evolutionary biologist who also has very deep spiritual practices that accompany her more scientific bent. Really a nice integration
Hi.
of masculine and feminine.
Let's see if I can get on here. Okay, here I am. I really loved the quote from the Mary Oliver poem. Just let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. It's one of my very favorite quotes of all time. And I've had lots of wonderful experiences with trees. And they actually have met several requests of mine to protect certain native peoples, and they come through. So, you know, I have tree friends here that I can see from my 18th floor down below me, and I, you know, wave hello to them every day and talk to them. So I really resonated to that whole presentation, Amos.
Great, thank you.
And I'm glad I got to stay. I didn't get called away, so.
Yeah.
So and by the way, for those who don't know, trees can hear, taste, touch, smell, and feel. Just because they don't have eyes and ears, they have those senses distributed throughout their bodies. And even with physical measuring instruments that don't measure everything in nature, we have detected 12 senses trees have that humans don't. I'm very fond of the book Brilliant Green. Amos, do you know that book?
I don't. Does it talk about those 12 senses?
Yes, it's by Stefano Mancuso,
Okay, I've heard of this.
Mancuso.
I've heard of
Yeah,
this. I'm gonna
it's a wonderful tree book. You'll love it.
Brilliant Green. Stefano
Brilliant Green.
Mancuso.
Yeah.
I wonder if I've ordered it and it's lost somewhere in my boxes of books.
Well, I'm glad I could remind you in that case.
Yeah. In fact, right here I can get it as an audiobook for $0. It shall be
Oh,
done.
good. Okay.
Good. All right. Thank you for that reminder. I'm very interested in senses, you know, in forest therapy. We're inspired by Japanese practice Shinrin-yoku or forest bathing, and all my Japanese friends who are like the researchers and innovators in this, they always say this phrase. They say all five senses, and I'm always like, no, because and this is to me an example of a hypnotic taming. We keep telling each other, you've got five senses, that's all of them. And when we do that, we devalue and begin to develop a kind of an anesthesia to the other incredible senses we have. And so I'm interested in these people who have insights into expanded catalogs of senses, not just for humans, but for others too. So thank you for mentioning that.
There's another favorite book of mine by James Bridle spelled like in horse bridle, called Ways of Being. And he's a young AI techie who really gets the way other than human nature communes, my word for it, you know, the direct transmission of information rather than communication, which is a kind of indirect way that humans have invented, mostly languages and things. But I love it when somebody who's a really strong techie gets the limitations of technology, why our digitizing all knowledge leaves out so much of the other than human nature and doesn't teach children. I worry about this. Like Google has whole education programs. Like in the country of El Salvador right now, every child is being educated online by Google. And these big companies and their algorithms, are leaving out so many of the things we want to touch on and that we feel deeply and are not honored by them and are called misinformation and all kind of stuff like that. So it's worrisome, and best to get the kids out into nature on those walks. I had an indigenous friend who used to have kids dig a shallow hole to lie in and cover themselves with leaves, and then just lie on the forest floor for an hour watching, listening. Things like that, where you really get there
Yeah,
and be part of it. I love
yeah,
those.
yeah. That's a nice one. Part of the initiation ceremony that I had was a burial with
Mhm.
dirt. It was really quite painful, actually. That went well into the night. Now, with an invitation like that, what you're describing, I love the idea of it, but I'd be really hesitant to do it with kids because of ticks and tick-borne
Oh
illness.
dear.
So, so
You
a
have to
lot.
have tick frisks after those. I used to call them
Well,
tick
yeah,
frisks, where you
yeah, we do.
inspect your kids.
We try to do a lot of education on how to avoid
Yeah,
tick-borne diseases, but
sure.
they're little critters and they're sneaky. And there are some forests where they're really intense and it changes the way we guide, and there are other
Mhm.
forests where they don't seem to appear.
Yeah.
I've been living in Arizona for 3 years now, and I have yet to see a single tick out in the forests here. you know
Interesting.
uh it doesn't necessarily mean they're not here, but I feel like I'm pretty attuned and vigilant, and I would have seen them if they're here in any significant numbers. So it depends. A lot depends on the forest. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I don't know whether she's able to open her mic, but Donna Moore has given so much thought to the kinds of things that we're talking about today. I wonder if she's able to share with us.
Well, I think there's absolutely no doubt that there's much to be learned from trees and plants and all our animal kingdoms. I'm curious myself, though, about these expanded senses that that you're both talking about. If you could say more about that.
Well, for me, the key thing has to do with becoming aware of the intelligence, the particular type of intelligence that lives in our hearts. I haven't really known how to train people to do that. I was reading a short essay by this Zen teacher, Adyashanti, who lives in the Bay Area in California. And he said something interesting, that he said, when we start paying attention to our senses, the what we call the five senses, right? And we become really aware of what we're experiencing in the sensory world in the present moment. And that's where our minds are resting, is in that awareness. He says the heart sense spontaneously opens up and makes itself known to us. I thought, yeah, that's congruent with my experience. I do think there are some things we can do to train our heart sense awareness, starting with as simple as just putting our hands over the region of our heart. Now, I'm not talking about the exact anatomical location of the heart. I'm talking about the region. And maybe it's more like where the heart chakra lives. If we put our hands there and we just start feeling into that and feeling in different ways, and maybe trying the experience. What happens if I breathe on my hand and I offer that breath to my heart? Do I notice anything? Is there anything that does the shape of my hands when I put them there, different ways I hold them there? So that's a way to start training that. And I would say also another important part of training this. There's a researcher, Louise Livingston in the UK, who writes about this. You can find her stuff online. She says when she writes from a very academic kind of position. She's a professor somewhere, and she said really one of the first things, the first barriers, is to just get people to stop thinking of the heart as only a mechanical pump. That's so deep in our minds and what we've been trained, that to get beyond that is for some people a significant barrier. And yet we all have in our language, we know about broken heart, or we have people who say, I just knew it in my heart. If you look up online one of the Bible concordances and you type in heart, you'll see thousands of references to the heart in the Bible. And many of them have to do with the path to wisdom and to knowing how to live in the world. That path involves the heart in really important ways. So I would say just start getting curious about it. One thing I do is I have this beautiful little cat. I don't know if you can see him back there. He knows I'm talking about him, so he just looked up. And he's a new cat in my life. My cats have been really important teachers for me. And he'll come and lay on my chest, and so he's right over my heart, right? I'm laying down on my back, he comes, it's right over my heart. And I use that as an opportunity to bathe him in my love and intentions and my best wishes for him. Oh, that cat's purring gets so loud when we're doing that. And the purring itself feeds back into my heart in a beautiful way. I don't know if any of this is helpful to you, and I hope something in it is helpful. Get a cat if you don't have one. Dogs are really good for this. I have a friend who wrote a book, and she's coming out with the second edition, Nadine Mazzola, Forest Bathing with Your Dog. And I actually went forest bathing with her once in Massachusetts with her and her dog, very near Walden Pond. And that dog was the guide, the teacher on that walk. And a lot of that had to do with just the willingness. Where does the willingness begin? I think for me, it begins in the heart. There's something about training the will that's a cognitive thing, that there's something like, okay, I'm willing to be guided by this animal. And for me, there's another story here that has to do with trees and forest bathing and Mother Earth. I had a bad fall a few years ago and lost consciousness, came into consciousness in hospital, and I had quite a serious concussion that's left me with a permanent brain injury. And when I was in the ICU, one of my cats, who was, a 2-hour drive away, started talking to me. It rang me up. And we had this beautiful conversation for a few days. And then I came back, and she was a little sulky about it because she's a cat. She didn't want to work. She just wanted to, sleep. But more recently, I was in Croatia. I had just spoken at a conference on forest therapy in Slovenia and was in a van with a group of people, including some of the top researchers in the world on this topic. And we were on our way to Croatia to speak at another conference. And Inku, my cat, calls me up and just tell, there she is. She's in my mind, right? And I ask her a question. I say, well, Inku, are there any new birds? We have a window seat, and we have a lot of birds outside that. So we call that window seat with the windows. We call that bird. We call that cat TV. Is her favorite station. So have there been any new birds? And Inku said this to me. Now listen to this, what Inku said. Inku said, I don't think of it that way. We don't experience it like that. Each bird in each moment is its own thing. Whether it's a bird that comes every day or that just flies through one time, what I get are bird moments. And the bird moment is a whole thing. I started thinking about it. I thought, well, there's these trees that I know. I think I know them. On trails I walk and I talk to them on a regular basis. Like, oh, I know that tree. I know when a limb falls off of it. But what I got from what Inca was telling me is, you know what? To think I know that tree is going to remove me from this other level of knowing, which I might call a tree moment. So each time I encounter it, encountering it with an open heart and with the humility of a friend who's just getting to know and to tend to this relationship. That would be a tree moment. Inku the cat taught me that. This little cat down here, he's new. He's only been with me for about a month and a half. And mostly what he wants to teach me is what a wet cat nose feels like on my face when I'm trying to sleep. So it's a whole different level of learning.
Phyllis, is there something you'd like to share with us?
Say hi. Say hi.
We're so grateful for you bringing us Amos.
That's Cooter.
Oh, Order?
Cooter.
Hooter.
Cooter. Okay, you can go back to sleep now. Okay. I bought him a rocking chair and he really likes it. So
New cat moments. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Amos shared about yeah, that intuition and knowledge, and how the two are constantly working together, or should be working in tandem with each other, you know, and the idea of imagination.
Microphone a little bit, Skylar.
What's that? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, the idea of intuition and knowledge, or wisdom, I guess, is the intersection of those two. I've definitely it made me think about what you said around the imagination being more important than knowledge, and my own mother, who is very imaginative, something I really love about her. And when I was a kid, you know, she used to, whenever I had a stomach ache, or you know, an ear infection or a headache, she always, you know, she was not anti-medicine, but she would never just like give me an aspirin. She would chant over me, you know. And I'll tell you, I never got sick until I was about 10 years old. It was so imaginative, right? That's what we understand as like, you know, psychosomatic. But it was that like love and the trust and that imagination of my mother, you know, healing me through this chanting, that it allowed my body to take care of itself, you know, naturally, versus sometimes I feel like the more I take medicine, the more I crystallize this illness or like the dis-ease and my reliance on, like, say for a headache, aspirin to make that headache go away, right? Versus just giving me the trust and space to allow my body to move on through, right? Of course, there's limits to each, right? To what the imagination and that divine can do. And then, like, having things like surgery is very nice too. It all plays a different role. But yeah, thinking about the Ramayana and like how we can use it to live now. There's a part of the story that we don't do in Diwali about Ram sending Sita away. And he doesn't want to send Sita away, but because she's lived in another man's house for a long time, she's considered now like unpure. And they have this test called the Agni. And the Agni has her walk through the fire to prove her purity. And so Ram asks her to do this Agni, and she does, and she passes through unscathed. But because the kingdom is talking about it and keeps on, gossiping in this way, he chooses to ask her to do the Agni again. And at this point, she's fed up, and she says, if I am pure, let my mother take me back into her fold. And the earth opens up, and down she goes. And I think that this is very relevant to how I live my life, and maybe how other people live their lives right now. This constant, at least in my life, I often question my intuition. I question, is that, should I be feeling that way? Like, I have a lot of, should I be feeling that way? And sometimes I have a lot of guilt around, oh, is that the right emotion to feel right now? And yeah, just thinking about how we send those questions outwards as well as inwards, or at least I do, to, my relationship with Mother Earth, and how I am in conversation with her. And yeah, I feel like we are like you said, in opposition in many ways. And finding that balance of that, like that union, right, between the two is not always an easy thing, but I think it does start within that like intuition and that honoring of the divine feminine as well as the divine masculine that's very emphasized in our culture, I will say. So yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed listening to your stories and how they might relate to this ancient story and the stories we're writing right now with AI and all of the many, many systems we have in place. So it's definitely got my mind and heart worrying and working up.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it, Donna.
Well, I was wondering about this idea of knowledge and intuition, and wondering if, there are levels of knowing, and they're not, in some ways we look at them in opposition, but perhaps they're all parts of a continuum of knowing that involve different aspects of our being, so that knowledge is a kind of a growing, coming to understand our fundamental nature, kind of the idea of the oneness. And we do that through different aspects of our being. I just wondered, Skylar, if you had any thoughts about that.
I think there are so many Dharma doors, right, to that oneness. in Buddhism and Hinduism, even in Abrahamic religions too, I feel like that it all comes down to that, like coming back to the one. For me, knowledge plus intuition is wisdom. And oh, can you hear me?
Say it one more time.
Renee, I think you might need to turn up your volume. Your
I did.
volume may be down.
I did.
Okay.
You're coming forward helped. Thank
Okay, good. To me, knowledge plus intuition is wisdom. And you can come into wisdom from the door of knowledge or the door of intuition, but for me, I feel like I have the most wisdom when I have both turned online, right? When I can bring that like logical thinking systems brain, a little bit moving away from emotionality and more clear thought, putting together all the little patterns or like pattern monkey mind. And then there's that intuition, which is, I think, a lot stiller for me. And actually mostly speaks to me when I'm not putting those patterns together, right? Mostly speaks to me when I'm much more still. And then, yeah, when those two things are in tandem, that's when I feel like I get more wisdom. It's like, I was talking to Renee in one of the satsangs the other week, and I was talking about like religious experiences or like that like bliss body experience that I sometimes get when I meditate. And the only times I've gotten there is when my body, my physical body, is very relaxed, after things like meditation or other ways too. So my body is very relaxed and my mind is pinpoint, clear and pinpointed. And it's like threading a needle. And if I can just get that total calm in the body and total focus of the mind, that's when I slip into it. And if either one of those are off, it's not going to happen. Not to say that that's the goal, but it was interesting reflecting on that of like, oh, yeah, those two things need to be present in a very balanced way in order for me to get to that state. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my thoughts on knowledge.
Thank you so much. Before we go, I just wanted to make sure that Eriko, if she wanted to say something, she got an opportunity.
I'll just quickly, Amos, it was a beautiful story. I'm very interested in forest bathing and being a guide. And just to enjoy your like a tree story, like orange tree talking and lemon tree talking differently and stuff. And just the main point is like listening in the heart. It's like so crucial, like to connect to the nature. Oh, and then one thing is like about five senses, because I'm from Japan, like we are so used to think about like just the five senses, but Phyllis pointed out that it's not five, just five. It's like all other senses. So that's I wanted to mention. And then also like about heart in Japanese, we have two different words for the heart as an organ and then heart as just a more mental heart. So that's, yeah, I think.
Can you share what those two words are?
Heart, like the mind heart is kokoro.
Kokoro.
Mm-hmm. And then the organ heart is shinzo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was curious about that, and I asked a guide in Japan about that once because, the forest bathing is shinin yoku. I said, well, does that shin in there have any relationship to the word shin for heart? No. It said, it doesn't. But, I think so. So I'll go with my story. Do you still live in Japan?
No, I'm in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, okay. Well, maybe I'll see you when I'm there next week. Who knows?
Oh yeah, I will be there.
Oh, great.
Let's wrap up with so much gratitude. Not I want to start with my gratitude for Phyllis Look. Otherwise, we would not have been introduced to Amos Clifford. And wow, what an amazing experience it has been, and how enriching it has been to our whole conversation, where we were going to start by talking about Princess Sita anyway, which Skylar gave us such an incredible introduction to, from the lens of her walking into this role, and what a whole heart, soul opening experience she got as a result of how she just really was open to what there was to learn, and not just staying at the preconceptions that she knew she was coming to it with. She was truly listening and opening. And I feel as if, Amos, you have given us so many ways of remaining open, listening, and actively listening, seeking listening, right from the idea of picking up the flower phone and speaking into it and listening to it, to be able to connect with Mother Earth, our main topic for the day. So I'm enormously grateful to each of the three of you, and to everyone who has participated in this conversation. Wonderful, wonderful. I'd love to tell you about the next couple weeks at Gems from the Wisdom Traditions. Next week will be the celebration, the Buddhist celebration called Buddha Purnima, which is the full moon in May, that is used for celebrating the Buddha's birth, death, and his enlightenment. And that topic is the Great Renunciation, in, once again, our Still and Moving Center Almanac. And Sharani Gracia, who's been kind enough to be our host today at Still and Moving Center, is going to take it up, and she's going to approach it from both the Buddhist and the Christian traditions, and how we could understand this topic and the connection between those two great traditions. The following week, we had with us for most of our conversation Blue, who is another one of our staffers at Stella Moving Center, and she's going to take up the conversation on the topic of the wisdom of Solomon. And that's actually from the tradition of the Old Testament. And thirdly, we have the topic of the Sphinx that will be presented to us by Kurt Gradine, one of our frequent presenters. He has such a rich philosophical and spiritual background, and he is also an amazing architect. And so for him to speak on the Sphinx, when he has studied so many of the temples of the world's different traditions, I think will also be very fascinating. So once again, thank you so much. And let's just all just do a little round of thank you and namaste to Amos and Skylar both. Thank you so much. I look forward to hopefully meeting you, Amos, when you are on island. Wonderful to have you.
I hope so. Yeah. Thank you so much for including me in this conversation.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha, Diana. Have a wonderful next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For joining. Thank you. Thank you. That was just marvelous, Amos. I had no idea where we were going to go with you, and you took us on a fabulous adventure. And I think I've been hungering for the kind of advice that you were able to share today. Touched me a lot. Thank you, Skylar. I I knew it was a deep experience for you, but I didn't know how it had gone. And it was, it just made me realize why your portrayal came off so powerfully on the outside, given what you had gone through on the inside.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely opened up a new space.
Aloha. So, Amos, when do you actually get here next week?
I think I'm there. I fly over on Wednesday and fly back the following Wednesday. And I don't know what my schedule is. I'm pretty sure that my schedule has been worked out by Phyllis and Jackie, who is our ANFT general manager, who will be going over there too. So I hope to get some snorkeling in.
Yeah.
One of my best experiences with forest bathing was snorkeling. And I just followed the exact sequence that we teach people to use in the forest. I use that same sequence in the reefs. And wow, I want to go do that again.
So Hanama Bay is my recommendation. It's spelled
Tanama Bay.
Hanauma is how it looks. Hanauma. Hanama Bay.
Well, there it is. They got stuff about it right there on the computer. Go figure.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for that recommendation. And thanks again for the opportunity to talk and to listen also to the beautiful insights of others. And yeah, I think we're at the end of the call, are we?
We are, yeah.
Okay.
The others have left, and it worked fine on our part to have you by phone. You're big, you're clear. The audio and visual were both really good. I
Great.
know you probably couldn't see very much, but
No, I only see one person at a time other than me, but that's, that's enough.
yeah. So it was marvelous.
Yeah.
If you do get a chance, like if you are maybe having an evening and you can come over, our house is on Kaneohe Bay. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it.
I'm going to just have to leave it up to Phyllis and Jackie pretty much. What I do, but I appreciate the invitation. I'm looking at the Hanauma Bay Nature Preserve, and it looks like it has a beautiful little bay right there for snorkeling. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, right from the nature preserve.
And you should ask them, which day you're available, because you kind of have to make reservations in advance, I believe.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that. Good to know. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's fun to have you have spoken about Santa Barbara, since I lived there for 25 or 30 years. So we talked about that, I know, a little bit, but I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My mother still lives there. I get down there every now and then. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Well, I think I'm going to depart now. So thanks again.
Aloha
And yeah, aloha.
so much.
Bye-bye. Yeah.